Hey, listeners, so how do you effectively set and maintain healthy boundaries between leadership and team members, especially when you find yourself becoming too friendly or overly familiar? It's a powerful question from one of our listeners, Theo, based in New Zealand. And today, we're diving into why boundaries matter more than ever for leadership impact. Let's discuss.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
Welcome to the Ask Dennis episode. This is a freestyle episode where I'm asked a question by our listeners or I share my thoughts, experiences, insights from working with many leaders around the globe. Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of Leadership is Changing. I'm your host, Denis Gianoutsos, and today's episode is based on a great question from one of our listeners here in New Zealand, and his name is Theo. And Theo asks this question: how do you effectively set and maintain healthy boundaries between leadership and team members, especially when you find yourself becoming too friendly or overly familiar? Theo, a brilliant question. And guess what? You're not alone. This is something I see quite often, especially with new leaders or leaders working in fast-paced, close-knit kind of teams. So let's dive into today's area around this, answering this question, and I'm going to cover off 4 parts in answering this question. Part 1 is why boundaries matter. Now, boundaries, they're not about being cold or distant or superior. They're about creating clarity, respect, and trust. And without boundaries, the teams become confused about accountability. Difficult conversations, they become harder. And your credibility as a leader may slowly erode over time. Now, when you're over-familiar, the lines start to blur. And when the lines blur, things like performance, decision-making, and team dynamics can actually suffer. So remember this: you can be approachable without being everyone's best friend. Part 2: what are the signs that you're too friendly? Well, if you're unsure whether you have crossed that line, here are a few signs to watch out for. You avoid giving tough feedback because you're worried about hurting people's feelings. Team members expect special treatment, or they can push the limits as well, or you're spending more time as a peer than as a leader. Look, being liked, it's nice, but being respected, that's essential. And the best leaders, they find a way to earn both nice and being respected. Part 3 is how do you set and maintain healthy boundaries? Well, here's a practical roadmap to help you. Number 1, I've got to say it's got to be setting clear expectations up front or early. Because if you can start with clarity, you let your team know what's expected, how you operate, what professionalism looks like, and how decisions will be made. Now, when a new leader takes over a new team, I tend to do a 2-hour workshop with the leader and that new team to help set expectations. In other words, the leader says what they're looking for, what they're expecting. The team says the exact same thing. But within a 2-hour period, we're putting everybody on the same page. Now, the thing here is this: people respect what you inspect. But first, you have to set what's expected. Because if you don't, then people don't know what is expected. The second part of this roadmap is lead with consistency. Because if you can be fair and consistent with everyone, that's a good thing. Don't let personal relationships influence how you give feedback or delegate responsibility. As an example, you may be friends with somebody outside of work. So how do you handle that one? Well, that's an interesting one too, especially when you're having to have tough or difficult conversations. But be mindful, because you see other team members may be looking at you going, hang on a sec, are you favoring that person more because you spend some time outside of work together? So that's something for you to think about. The third part of the roadmap is create space for candid conversations. Look, let your team know they can come to you, but that you're not here to be a buddy. You're here to help them grow, and that includes having uncomfortable conversations. If you care about someone, you'll tell them the truth, respectfully, but clearly. The thing here with this one is that you can have those conversations. Look, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have fun within the team and all be happy. You got to do that because that's really important. But there's a fine line, and you need to actually make sure you create that space to have those robust, candid kind of conversations. The fourth area in the roadmap is use professional warmth. Now, what do I mean by this? Yes, you can be warm, compassionate, and approachable, but keep it within a professional frame. Be empathetic, but maintain your leadership lens. And I think the leadership lens is something that's quite important for us all to think about. Look at it through your leadership lens. Now let's go back to the 4 parts, right? So we've done part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 4 is what to do if you've crossed the line. So let's say you already have, right? So what if you're already too close? You've become one of the team instead of the leader. So you don't have to burn bridges, but you do need to reset the tone within the team. And here's how. Well, a few things to look at, but I'm sure there are other areas as well. One thing I would say here is acknowledge it privately with team members if needed. Reinforce expectations moving forward and back it up with action. Show consistency in how you lead. Now, because you see, the thing here is this, that if you reinforce the expectations, but don't back it up with action, then you're going to be sending some mixed messages and people won't believe you and you'll lose credibility. Now, don't apologize for being clear. Clarity is leadership. Now, resetting the boundaries isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming effective. It's not just what you say here, but it's also how you say it to people to help reset the tone. My final thoughts here, listeners, is that to Theo and every other leader out there, leadership is not about being popular. It's about guiding people to grow, succeed, and perform. You don't need to be everyone's friend to be their trusted and respected leader. In fact, the most admired leaders are often those who walk the fine line with empathy, strength, and clarity. So what about you? Where do you need to tighten your boundaries? So your call to action is this. If today's episode resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. What's one boundary you need to reinforce this week? And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review and share this with a fellow leader. Hey, listeners, if you've got a question like Theo, send it in. We'd love to feature it on future episodes. Thanks again for tuning in. Keep leading, be adaptable, stay deliberate, and remember, leadership is changing. Are you? Hey, listeners, that's it for this episode. It's always been a pleasure being with you. Thanks for joining me on the Leadership is Changing podcast. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.